Music like that somehow goes to that primal part of me, much like flute music sometimes. And I don't know what that's about. It just works. Thank you. So a philosophy professor, after exposing his students to a broad array of subject matter for the semester, presented their one-question final exam. And once everybody was in the room, they were seated, they were ready to go, he took his chair, put it up on the table, and said, using everything that you have learned this semester, disprove the existence of the chair. Pencils just scurried through the paper and erasers erased, and people wrote furtively for a solid hour. I mean, some of them filling 30 pages. But there was this one student who was done and turned in his paper in less than a minute. A couple of days later, when the grades were posted, all of the grades were there, and there's this one particular student was the only one with an A. And so everybody was curious, what gives? What did he do in his test that took less than a minute, and he gets an A? And what his test answer was, what chair? You see, all philosophies, like I mentioned last month, all philosophies start with a premise, a basic proposition that everything that follows in that philosophy is founded on and comes from. And the first premise, the first principle, the premise of the science of mind is God. And that God, interestingly enough, according to Holmes, is love. He says there's one ultimate impulsion in the universe. This impulsion is love. It is the pure essence of divine givingness. Not only is God love, but he also says love is givingness. So what he defines as God is the givingness of life. Life just keeps giving. And everything that we learn in this teaching and how we put it to use in this teaching is really about accepting more of that givingness that already exists. Awakening to more of that givingness within us so that we give more. And so I'm going to share with you today a point of view, my point of view about this givingness thing and how it shows up in the human experience and how we can resort to going back to our primal roots and embracing, much like that music stimulates the core of me, that core of us, which is love or givingness. Holmes also wrote, love is the greatest healing, motivating power in the universe because love is givingness. Again, he states it. Love is above all the gift of oneself. With Jean, all those other middle names, Ennui, the French dramatist. And he also says, a little bit later, I'll share with you another piece which ties it all together. So, to love is to give. That's a great proposition. If to love is to give, that means to withhold is not to love. Now, I bet every single person in here has withheld their love at some point or another. Someone you perceive as hurt you, or you have hurt someone, and the result of that is they withhold. They withhold the givingness of themselves. They play takeaway. Takeaway is a very 3-year-old point of view. So every child who comes into life is constantly doing this. They're giving until they turn 3. And what happens when they turn 3? Well, they're toddlers, right? Some of the toddler property laws. If I see it, it's mine. If I like it, it's mine. If it's in my hand, it's mine. If I can take it from you, it's mine. If I had it a little while ago, it's mine. If it's mine, it must never appear to be yours in any way. And if I'm doing or building something, all the pieces are mine. If it looks like mine, it's mine. If I just had it and now you have it, it's mine. If I pick up a toy at anyone else's house, it's mine. If I go to a birthday party, some or all of the gifts are mine. So you know exactly what I'm talking about, don't you? And toddlers are somewhat forgiven in that behavior because it's a nature of human development. But at the same time, as adults, we're not so forgiven of that kind of behavior, are we? Because we're supposed to be over that. I wonder. Sometimes we do the same thing. And when we withhold, when we hold back, what we're doing is holding back the givingness of us. We're not loving. And we know that love is a healing presence, a healing power. As we give, more of us gets released into life. Barbara Marx Hubbard, this would have been in the early 80s, came to the realization that she kept withholding what she came here to do. She kept making up excuses, looking at circumstances, finding reasons why not to do what she came here to do based on her own self-revealing. And she noticed that the more she didn't give of herself, the sicker she got. She said, so I can either manifest my creativity or I can manifest disease. Tough lesson to get. But what if what we could do is start tapping into that love within and start bringing more of it out by giving genuinely of ourselves? Well, you know how people are. They're just going to take advantage of me, right? That's a great reason why not to. And who suffers? We do. When we hold back, we suffer because creativity must express. It's one of the laws. So here's the question. We have all these theories that say God is love, God is givingness, and the source of the universe is the most beneficent power, and whatever story you might want to make up about what God is or is not, and I simplify it because that part of me that wants to keep things as simple and straightforward as possible dominates the way I look at life. And that part that's so simple is I prove simply by thinking the intelligence of the divine. I've already somehow proven to myself that God, or whatever you want to call it, is everywhere. If it's everywhere, it's in me too. It's in every person, it's in everything. Somehow that landed, and how, I don't know, except through meditation. And I also have noticed that when I hold me back, it doesn't feel so good. When I let me express, it feels better. And that hedonist of me just likes feeling better. How about you? I think feeling better is not a bad thing, is it? So when we withhold, when we don't give of ourselves, we're not giving of love, it sits inside of us and festers. When we forgive, give forth again, that's when we start loving again. That's when we start living again, because we get really cautious when we hold back, when we withhold. We're cautious and we're sort of going into life this way, not full, wide open. Which would you prefer? Now, I know every single person here who's over 3 has had an experience of being taken advantage of in one way or another. Taken for granted, not appreciated, or literally fully taken advantage of. I was talking about the Saturday's Warrior presentation when one year, about, it's probably been 15, 18 years ago, the focus was on the Zion Consolidated Mercantile Company, but it was nicknamed ZCMY. ZCMI. And these two brothers who ran the company would take advantage of all the employees that work them overtime and not pay them. They'd pay them a pittance of a wage, etc., etc., etc. And they were convinced, and they did their best to convince the employees that their simple statement of appreciation was good enough to make up for all that abuse. So they would abuse someone, and then they would stand back like this with their arms crossed and say, "Sure do appreciate ya." And I heard that, and then I started hearing it around me in the community. At those cheap acknowledgments, and that's what I call it, because it was given in order to take advantage of someone. It was a manipulation. And it's not just with ZCMI or ZCMY, and it wasn't just in Saturday's Warrior. Saturday's Warrior captured some of the elements that went on here in this valley and shined a light on it. So maybe we could do something about that. We could somehow change it. And this philosophy, if it's not about shining the light on what works and does not work, then I've missed the boat. Certainly has for me. Let me see what works and what does not work, and it encourages me to do more the former than the latter. So withholding doesn't make any sense. To forgive is to continue to give again. It is to continue the giving process. It's to love again. And that's not necessarily easy. Ernest Holmes wrote, "The true meaning of love is a wonderful thing, for it is the desire of the soul, that core of us, to express itself in terms of creation. Creation is brought about only through the self-givingness of the lover to the object of his or her love." Now, people, we're not talking about people to people necessarily, because there are other works that one might love, and it's a statement of creation and a statement of that individual soul's expression in life. It doesn't get much better than watching somebody's lights be bright as they're involving themselves in some creation. It could be a piece of art, it could be a piece of music, it could be in sharing with another person that very thing that just lights them up. What is the last thing that lit you up? That's the infinite creativity that lives within you. It wants out. Inayat Khan, he was the founder of the Western order of Sufism. In man's search for truth, the first lesson and the last is love. There must be no separation, no I am and thou art not. Until man has arrived at that selfless consciousness, he cannot know life and truth. Now, people, we're talking about very high-minded notions here. It's about this abstraction of God as love, as givingness, and what have you, and yet it shows up in each of us. We experience that in our lives day to day to day to day, because we can't separate ourselves from that creativity. We can't separate ourselves from that power, that intelligence, that presence, that love itself, that givingness. Now, we can hold back, and we do without. So, Jean Anouilh again. Our entire life consists ultimately in accepting ourselves as we are. So divine love, finding it within, is really about acknowledging it therein, sharing it out there in life, and making sure that we share it with our own selves in our own lives as well. Because as Dostoevsky wrote, the more you succeed in loving, the more you'll be convinced of the existence of God and the immortality of your soul. Divine love, it's within. Let's let it out. Bless you. So let's pray together. Let's settle down into and center and pray together. So even though I have heard many different ways and from many different sources that the one life, the one power, the one intelligence, that love of life itself is divinity itself, God. And I know it as one life. What a good life. What a joy-filled life. And I notice that that life expresses in me, I feel it, and as me as I express in life. So I know that no matter what I choose, and right now I choose my next expansive expression, no matter what I choose, it comes from that power, from that intelligence, from that love. So as these individual prayers continue, I speak my word for this group, for this beloved group, that power and that intelligence operates right at the core of each person. It bubbles its way up and into expression through every cell, and it comes forth consistent with its true nature: perfection, wholeness, a natural givingness. It comes forth as a loving expression. And I know that no matter what I have concluded before, there's no precedent in any of these previous decisions. They hold no sway or power over this infinite intelligence, this infinite power. So I let more of that good out. I let more of the joy out. I let more of the health and well-being and the wholeness out. And feel such freedom and that tingling within that I recognize as gratitude itself, because I know it's already done, already so. So I relax. I let it be. And together we affirm it by saying, and so it is.